The vast, domed chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the assembled delegates. All eyes were fixed on the rotating 3D model of an ancient alien artifact. Its sharp geometric edges and inscrutably complex surface markings, a far cry from the sleek, organic aesthetics common to the technology of the known galactic civilizations. Honored representatives, the artifact we have uncovered on the human colony world of Kepler 16 bits defies all classification within our existing cultural and technological databases, announced the lead xenorchaeologist, her voice measured but with an unmistakable undercurrent of unease. Carbon dating and spectroscopic analysis conclusively date this relic to over 50,000 standard years ago, a time when, according to our historical records, humanity had not yet achieved interstellar travel, let alone the level of engineering prowess this device represents. A murmur of consternation rippled through the chamber. The human delegate, Raina Zhao, straightened in her seat, her dark eyes narrowing, as she studied the hypnotic spin of the hologram. Beside her, the towering reptilian form of the Kresh representative shifted restlessly, a low rumble emanating from its barrel chest. "If I may," Zhao said, her words cutting through the ambient chatter. "Are you suggesting that this artifact predates not only humanity's own spacefaring capabilities, but the technological development of the elder races as well?" The xenorchaeologist inclined her head. "That is precisely what the evidence indicates, Counselor Zhao. Whatever civilization created this relic, it far surpasses the oldest known cultures in our galactic annals, including your own esteemed Kresh Empire." The Kresh delegate let out a menacing hiss, its scaly jaws parting to reveal serrated teeth. "Impossible. The Kresh have walked the stars for over 30 millennia. We were the first to spread beyond our homeworld and forge an interstellar dominion. This artifact must be some kind of human forgery, an elaborate hoax-to. I can assure you, honored counselor," the xenorchaeologist interrupted, her tone firm, "that every measure has been taken to verify the authenticity of this discovery. The dating, the metallurgical analysis, the inscriptions, all point to this artifact being of genuine extraterrestrial origin, one that predates even your own people's earliest forays into deep space." Zhao raised a hand, silencing the Kresh delegate before he could unleash another tirade. "If I may interject," she said levelly, "perhaps we are approaching this from the wrong angle. Rather than immediately dismissing the implications, would it not be prudent to consider the possibility that there existed a civilization far more ancient and technologically advanced than any we currently know of? One that may have seeded the galaxy and influenced the subsequent development of younger species like ourselves." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of protests and demands for clarification. The human counselor weathered the storm, her expression impassive. Finally, the presiding elder, a wizened Solari with luminous eyes, raised a gnarled hand, commanding silence. "Counselor Zhao raises a disturbing possibility," the Solari said, his reedy voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "If true, it would call into question the very foundations of our understanding of galactic history and the origins of sentient life. Yet the evidence presented by our xenorchaeological team is compelling." He turned his luminous gaze to the fidgeting Kresh delegate. "Honored counselor, I understand your skepticism. However, I must remind you that the pursuit of knowledge and the unbiased examination of facts is the primary purpose of this council. To dismiss outright the revelations before us would be a dereliction of our duty." The Kresh delegate opened his mouth to respond, but was cut off by a gesture from the Solari. "No, hear me out. I propose that we convene a special investigative committee tasked with conducting a thorough galaxy-wide survey of similar ancient artifacts and historical records. If Counselor Zhao's hypothesis bears merit, then we must be prepared to revise our understanding of our own origins, no matter how unsettling the implications may be." A hush fell over the chamber as the delegates absorbed the Solari's words. Zhao caught the sidelong glance of the human ambassador, a flicker of trepidation in the other woman's eyes. For the first time, the full weight of this discovery seemed to settle upon the Council, a revelation that could upend the very foundations of their interstellar civilization. "So be it," the Solari declared, his voice brooking no further argument. "The committee is formed, effective immediately. I will require volunteers from each of the represented species to participate in this critical investigation. The future of our galactic order may very well hang in the balance." As the Council erupted into a flurry of hurried discussions and frantic whispers, Zhao leaned back in her seat, a mix of trepidation and anticipation coursing through her. Whatever lay buried in humanity's past, the time had come for the truth to be uncovered, no matter the cost. The investigative committee convened by the Galactic Council wasted no time in mobilizing its resources. Within days, survey teams had been dispatched to scour the known reaches of the galaxy, scouring ancient ruins and long-abandoned archaeological sites for any signs of the mysterious precursor civilization. At the heart of the operation was Michael Donovan, a young human anthropologist who had been handpicked by Counselor Zhao to lend his expertise to the endeavor. Though initially skeptical of the undertaking, fearing it was merely a ploy by the elder races to uncover potentially disruptive secrets about humanity's past, Donovan found himself increasingly drawn into the intriguing mystery. As the initial field reports trickled in, a tantalizing picture began to emerge. Fragments of advanced technology, inscriptions in unknown scripts, architectural styles that defied the norms of the currently dominant galactic cultures, all pointed to the existence of a civilization far more ancient and sophisticated than anything documented in the annals of recorded history. Donovan pored over the data, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is extraordinary," he murmured, his fingers flying across the holographic interface as he cross-referenced the findings. The level of engineering prowess exhibited in these artifacts is leagues beyond even our current interstellar capabilities. And the sheer geographic spread of these sites, they seem to span the entire known galaxy. Beside him, the Solari delegate, Viria, nodded slowly, her luminous eyes narrowed in thought. Indeed, whatever this progenitor civilization was, they appear to have been a spacefaring culture of immense power and influence. The question is, what happened to them? How is it possible that they have been so completely expunged from our historical record? Donovan shook his head, his expression troubled. "That's what worries me the most. If this civilization was so advanced, so dominant, why is there no mention of them in any of the historical archives we've accessed so far? It's as if they simply vanished, leaving behind only these cryptic remnants." Viria hummed pensively. Perhaps they wished to remain hidden, to guide the development of younger species from the shadows. Or perhaps, she paused, her gaze flickering to the side. Perhaps something more sinister befell them. Donovan felt a chill run down his spine at the Solari's implication. "You mean, they were destroyed? By whom or what?" "I do not know," Viria admitted, her voice tinged with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "But the evidence we've uncovered thus far suggests that whatever occurred, it was cataclysmic enough to erase all trace of this progenitor civilization from the collective memory of the galaxy." The human anthropologist fell silent, his mind racing. If the elder races had been unaware of this ancient precursor culture, then the implications were staggering. Not only would it call into question the very foundations of galactic history and sociopolitical structures, but it could also have profound ramifications for humanity's own place in the cosmic order. "Counselor Viria," Donovan said slowly, "if what we're discovering is true, then it would mean that humanity may not be the relative newcomers to interstellar civilization that we've always believed ourselves to be." He paused, swallowing hard. "It could mean that we are in fact the descendants of this progenitor race, the original architects of the galactic order." Viria regarded him steadily, her luminous eyes unreadable. "It is a possibility we must consider, Michael Donovan. One that could upend everything we thought we knew about the origins of sentient life in this galaxy." The Solari elder placed a gnarled hand on Donovan's shoulder, the weight of her words settling like a lead ball in the pit of his stomach. And if true, it may have dire consequences for the future of our entire civilization. As the implications of their findings began to sink in, Donovan felt a growing sense of unease. Whatever secrets lay buried in humanity's past, it was clear that the Galactic Council was no longer the sole arbiter of galactic history and destiny. The truth, it seemed, had been hidden from them all along, and the ramifications of uncovering it could be catastrophic. The findings of the investigative committee quickly ignited a firestorm of controversy across the Galactic Council. While some delegates, like the Solari Furia, remained open-minded and willing to consider the radical implications of the progenitor civilization, others reacted with outright hostility and denial. None more so than the Kresh, whose representative stormed out of the council chambers, his reptilian features contorted in a mask of fury. Preposterous lies. He had roared, slamming his fist on the table. The Kresh Empire has stood as the preeminent power in this galaxy for millennia. We will not have our heritage usurped by some long-extinct relic builders. Tensions escalated rapidly, with the human delegation led by Reina Zhao finding themselves increasingly at odds with the more conservative elder races. Demands for transparency and a full disclosure of the investigative findings were met with stonewalling and obfuscation from those delegates unwilling to accept the potential ramifications. This is precisely why we should have never allowed the humans a seat on this council, the Galan ambassador hissed, her iridescent skin rippling with barely contained outrage. Their insatiable thirst for knowledge and disregard for tradition threatens to tear apart the very fabric of our civilization. Zhao met the accusation with a cool, level stare. The search for truth is the hallmark of a healthy, evolving society, honored ambassador. To dismiss evidence simply because it challenges our preconceptions is the height of arrogance and intellectual dishonesty. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of heated debate, with delegates hurling accusations and counter-arguments across the floor. Michael Donovan, seated unobtrusively in the observer's gallery, watched the proceedings with a growing sense of unease. It was clear that the revelation of the progenitor civilization had struck a deep primal chord among the elder races, one that threatened to tear the delicate balance of interstellar diplomacy asunder. And caught in the middle were the humans, whose very existence now seemed to hold the key to unlocking the galaxy's most profound mysteries. As the session drew to a chaotic close, Donovan caught Freya's eye. The Solari elder inclined her head subtly, her luminous gaze conveying a silent message. We must proceed with caution. In the days that followed, the anthropologist found himself increasingly drawn into the covert machinations of the council. While the public discourse remained mired in acrimonious debate, behind the scenes a more insidious game was being played. Donovan discovered that factions within the elder races had launched their own parallel investigations, working in secret to uncover any shred of evidence that might undermine the progenitor hypothesis. Meanwhile, human researchers found their access to crucial archaeological sites and historical archives systematically restricted or outright denied. "They're afraid," Zhao confided to Donovan during a rare moment of privacy. "Afraid that if the truth about our origins comes to light, it will fundamentally challenge the existing power structures in this galaxy. The elder races have ruled unchallenged for so long, they can't bear the thought of humanity reclaiming our rightful place as the progenitors of interstellar civilization." Donovan nodded grimly. "And they're willing to go to any lengths to prevent that from happening." He paused, his brow furrowed in thought. "But what about the Solari? Surely they must see the value in uncovering the full truth, regardless of the consequences." Zhao's expression darkened. "The Solari are a complex people, Michael. While Furia and a few others may be willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads, there are elements within their own ranks who are no less threatened by the prospect of a human-centric galactic order." She leaned in, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "I fear that the very foundations of the Galactic Council are being undermined from within. If we're not careful, This search for the truth could tear the entire interstellar community apart. Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. The stakes, it seemed, were higher than anyone had imagined. The revelation of the progenitor civilization was no mere academic exercise. It was a challenge to the very legitimacy of the existing galactic power structure. And as the forces of obfuscation and denial arrayed themselves against the truth, he knew that the future of humanity, and perhaps the entire cosmos, hung in the balance. As the political tensions within the Galactic Council reached a fever pitch, Michael Donovan found himself increasingly isolated and under scrutiny. Despite his best efforts to remain objective and maintain a low profile, the young anthropologist had become a central figure in the unfolding drama, a human caught between the opposing forces vying for control of the narrative. Late one evening, as Donovan pored over the latest field reports in the relative sanctuary of his private quarters, a sharp knock at the door startled him from his concentration. Pulse quickening, he approached the entryway and peered through the security viewport, only to be greeted by the familiar, luminous gaze of the Solari delegate, Viria. "Counselor," Donovan breathed, ushering the elder inside with a mixture of relief and trepidation. "What brings you here at this hour? Is something amiss?" Viria's wrinkled features creased in a faint smile as the door slid shut behind her. "I apologize for the late intrusion, Michael, but I fear we may have uncovered something that could jeopardize the entire investigation." Donovan's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "During my own private inquiries," Viria began, her tone low and grave, "I've discovered evidence of a concerted effort by certain factions within the Council to suppress key findings related to the progenitor civilization." The anthropologist felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying there's a cover-up?" Viria inclined her head solemnly. "I'm afraid so. It appears that some of our fellow delegates are willing to go to great lengths to prevent the full truth from coming to light, even if it means obstructing the work of the investigative committee." Donovan ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. But why? What could possibly be so damning about the progenitors that the elder races would risk tearing the Council apart to keep it hidden? "That, I'm afraid, is precisely what we need to uncover," Viria replied, her luminous eyes narrowing with determination. "The clues we gathered thus far suggest that the progenitors were far more than just an advanced precursor civilization. There are indications that they may have played a direct role in the seeding and development of sentient life across the galaxy, including our own species." Donovan felt his breath catch in his throat. "You mean the progenitors could be responsible for our origins as well?" Viria nodded gravely. "It is a possibility we cannot ignore. And if true, it would fundamentally challenge the very foundations of our understanding of galactic history and the established order." She paused, her gaze piercing. "An order that certain factions within the Council are willing to defend at all costs." Donovan's mind reeled with the implications. If the progenitors had indeed engineered the rise of the elder races and humanity alike, then the ramifications would be staggering. Not only would it call into question the legitimacy of the Galactic Council's authority, but it could also have profound implications for the sense of identity and self-determination of every sentient being in the known cosmos. "We're sitting on a powder keg," Donovan murmured, his brow furrowed with worry. "And the slightest spark could set off an explosion that tears this entire civilization apart." Viria's expression was grave. "Which is precisely why we must tread carefully, Michael. The truth, as they say, has a habit of coming to light whether we wish it or not. But the manner in which it is revealed, and by whom, may very well determine the fate of us all." The Solari elder reached out, placing a gnarled hand on Donovan's shoulder. "You, more than anyone, understand the stakes involved. The progenitor mystery has become a crucible, testing the very foundations of our shared existence, and I fear that you, as a human, may find yourself at the center of it all." Donovan swallowed hard, the weight of Viria's words settling like a lead ball in the pit of his stomach. "What are you asking of me, counselor?" Viria's lips curved in a faint, sorrowful smile. I'm asking you to be brave, Michael Donovan, to uncover the truth, no matter the personal cost. For if you fail, the consequences may be more dire than any of us can imagine." With that, the Solari elder turned and slipped back out into the corridor, leaving Donovan alone with his swirling thoughts and a growing sense of dread. The path ahead was perilous, fraught with unseen perils and the machinations of unseen foes. But if the progenitor mystery held the key to humanity's true origins, then Donovan knew he had no choice but to follow it, wherever it might lead. In the days that followed Viria's late-night visit, Michael Donovan found himself increasingly embroiled in a web of intrigue and subterfuge that threatened to consume him whole. The Solari elder's dire warning had galvanized the young anthropologist, spurring him to redouble his efforts to uncover the full truth about the mysterious progenitor civilization. However, Donovan's renewed focus came at a heavy personal cost. As he delved deeper into the investigation, he found himself the target of a sustained campaign of harassment and obstruction, orchestrated by those factions within the Galactic Council who were determined to bury the progenitor mystery forever. Crucial archaeological sites were suddenly off-limits, their access restricted by nebulous security concerns. Historical archives, once freely available, were now guarded by layers of bureaucratic red tape, and on more than one occasion, Donovan found himself the subject of thinly veiled threats, his every move shadowed by unknown agents. "They're closing in," Donovan confided to Reina Zhao during a furtive meeting in a dimly lit cantina. "The walls are closing in, and I'm running out of options." Zhao's dark eyes narrowed with concern. "I know, Michael. We're all feeling the pressure." She leaned in, her voice lowering to a whisper. "But you can't give up now. Not when we're this close to the truth." Donovan let out a weary sigh, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not giving up, Reina. But I'm starting to wonder if the price of this truth is going to be more than any of us are willing to pay." The human counselor regarded him steadily, her expression grave. "You know as well as I do that we can't turn back now. Whatever lies buried in the past, we have a responsibility to uncover it, for the sake of our people, and for the sake of the entire galactic community." Donovan nodded reluctantly. "I know. But the more I learn, the more I realize just how high the stakes truly are." He paused, his brow furrowing in thought. "Viria said that the progenitors may have had a hand in our very origins, that they could be responsible for seeding sentient life across the galaxy. If that's true, then everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos is a lie." Zhou finished, her expression grim. "And the elder races will stop at nothing to prevent that truth from coming to light." The two humans fell silent, the weight of their conversation hanging heavily between them. Donovan could feel the pressure building, the noose tightening around his neck with every passing day. He knew that he was being watched, that his every move was being scrutinized by unseen forces intent on silencing him. But he also knew that he couldn't turn back, not now, not ever. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Donovan was the only one who could bring it to light. Fria's words echoed in his mind, a constant, haunting reminder of the stakes involved. Underscore, the truth has a habit of coming to light, whether we wish it or not. Underscore. "I have to keep going," Donovan murmured, his resolve hardening. "I have to find a way to expose this cover-up, to reveal the progenitor's role in our history, even if it costs me everything." Zhao reached across the table, squeezing his hand with a reassuring grip. "Then you won't be alone, Michael. The humans will stand with you, no matter the consequences. We've come too far to turn back now." Donovan felt a spark of hope ignite within him, even as a sense of dread coiled in the pit of his stomach. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but he knew that he had no choice but to walk it. The fate of the entire galactic civilization hung in the balance, and he would be damned if he let the truth be buried again. With a nod, he rose from the table, his eyes burning with determination. "Then let's get to work. We have a conspiracy to unravel, and a legacy to reclaim." As Donovan slipped out into the shadowy streets of the bustling spaceport, He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The threats were closing in, the walls were narrowing, and the forces arrayed against him were powerful and unforgiving. But the young anthropologist refused to be cowed. He would face them head-on, no matter the cost. For the sake of his people, and for the sake of the galaxy itself, he would uncover the truth, even if it came too late to save them all. Donovan's nerves were frayed, his senses heightened to a razor's edge as he slipped through the dimly lit corridors of the safe house. The weight of the data crystal in his pocket felt like a lead burden, a ticking time bomb that threatened to expose the most shattering revelations about the galaxy's past. After weeks of painstaking investigation, harassment, and near misses, he had finally managed to piece together the missing links in the progenitor mystery. The truth was there, waiting to be shared with the galaxy. But the forces of secrecy and denial were closing in, determined to bury it forever. As Donovan reached his destination, a nondescript door in a shadowy alcove, he paused, casting a wary glance over his shoulder. The feeling of being watched had never left him, a constant source of unease that gnawed at the back of his mind. Taking a deep breath, he keyed in the access code and stepped inside, sealing the door behind him. The room was sparsely furnished, but Donovan's eyes were drawn to the holographic display at its center, where a familiar face greeted him. "Counselor Virya," he breathed, the relief in his voice palpable. "I have the data. Everything we need to expose the truth about the progenitors." The Solari Elder's luminous eyes narrowed, her expression grave. "Then you must act quickly, Michael. The net is closing, and we may only have one chance to reveal this knowledge to the galaxy before it's too late." Donovan nodded, his fingers trembling as he extracted the data crystal and slotted it into the display. Instantly, a torrent of information flickered to life, charts and diagrams dancing across the hologram as Virya's associates began to sift through the trove of evidence. "This is extraordinary," one of the researchers murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. The progenitors weren't just an advanced precursor civilization. They were the architects of sentient life in this galaxy. They seeded the very building blocks of consciousness, guiding the emergence of species like humans and the elder races. Virya inclined her head solemnly. "As we had suspected, the implications are staggering and potentially devastating to the existing power structures of the Galactic Council." Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. Then the cover-up must be worse than we imagined. If the truth about the progenitors comes to light, it could undermine the legitimacy of the entire interstellar order. The Solari Elder's expression hardened. "Precisely. And the forces arrayed against us will stop at nothing to prevent that from happening." As if on cue, the room was suddenly plunged into darkness, the holographic display flickering and dying. Donovan felt his heart leap into his throat, his hand instinctively reaching for the concealed weapon at his belt. "They found us." Virya's voice rang out, calm but tinged with urgency. "Michael, you must get this data to the public. Broadcast it across every interstellar channel before they can silence us permanently." Donovan hesitated, his mind racing. "But what about you? What about the others?" "We will hold them off as long as we can," the Solari replied. "But you are the key, Michael. You must ensure that the truth comes to light, no matter the cost." Before Donovan could protest, the door to the safe house burst open, a blinding flood of light cutting through the gloom. Wordlessly, he snatched up the data crystal and sprinted for the exit, his lungs burning as he fled into the shadowy alleys. Behind him, the sounds of a desperate struggle echoed through the night, the crackle of energy weapons and the agonized cries of the Solari and their allies. Donovan ran, his heart pounding, the weight of his burden threatening to crush him. He had to get the data out, had to broadcast the truth to the galaxy before it was too late. But the forces of darkness were in pursuit, and Donovan knew that he was running out of time. As he ducked into a narrow service corridor, Donovan paused, his chest heaving. He stared down at the data crystal, its surface glittering with the secrets of humanity's past and the galaxy's future. "I'm sorry, Varia," he whispered, a lump forming in his throat. "I'm so sorry." With a trembling hand, he activated the broadcast beacon, sending a burst of data out into the vastness of space. The crystal's work was done. Now, it was up to the galaxy to decide the fate of the progenitor legacy. Donovan turned, steeling himself for the confrontation that he knew was coming. He would face the forces of denial and oppression head-on, no matter the cost. For the sake of the truth, and for the sake of everything he held dear, he would fight to the last. As the sound of pounding footsteps echoed down the corridor, Donovan tightened his grip on his weapon and stepped out of the shadows, ready to stand his ground. The battle for the galaxy's future had begun. Donovan's footsteps echoed through the deserted corridor as he ran, the data crystal clutched tightly in his hand. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit grew ever closer, the pounding of boots and the crackle of energy weapons a relentless, ominous rhythm. He knew he couldn't keep running forever. The forces arrayed against him were powerful, their resources seemingly limitless, but he also knew that he couldn't afford to fail, not when the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. Rounding a corner, Donovan spotted a service hatch, its cover ajar. Without hesitation, he dove through the opening, sealing the hatch behind him, and plunging himself into the dimly lit confines of the maintenance duct. For a moment, the sounds of the pursuit faded, replaced by the hum of machinery and the distant echoes of voices. Donovan paused, leaning against the bulkhead as he tried to catch his breath. His heart was pounding, his mind racing. He knew that the data he carried held the key to unraveling the progenitor mystery, and with it, the very foundations of the Galactic Council's power. But the forces of denial and obfuscation were closing in, determined to silence him before he could reveal the truth. Varia and her allies had sacrificed themselves to buy him this chance, and Donovan knew that he couldn't let their efforts be in vain. With a renewed sense of purpose, he pressed onward, navigating the labyrinthine network of maintenance ducts and access tunnels. He had to find a way to broadcast the progenitor data, to share it with the galaxy before the Council's agents could intercept him. As he emerged into a dimly lit service bay, Donovan paused, his gaze sweeping the area for any signs of activity. The coast seemed clear for the moment, and he quickly crossed the open space, his eyes fixed on a nearby communications terminal. But just as he was about to access the terminal, a familiar voice rang out, freezing him in his tracks. "So, the human anthropologist thinks he can play at being the hero, does he?" Donovan whirled around, his heart sinking as he recognized the reptilian features of the Kresh delegate, flanked by a contingent of armed guards. "You're too late, Kresh," Donovan spat, his grip tightening on the data crystal. "The truth is already out there. You can't stop it now." The Kresh delegate let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Oh, but we can, _human_, and we will." His eyes narrowed, a malicious glint flickering within their depths. "You see, we've been preparing for this eventuality for a long time. We knew that the revelation of the progenitors could tear the Galactic Council apart, and we're not about to let that happen." Donovan felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that we're willing to do whatever it takes to preserve the status quo," the Kresh delegate growled, "even if it means eliminating every last trace of the progenitor civilization, and every last human who dares to uncover their secrets." Donovan's mind raced, his heart pounding in his ears. He knew that he was outmatched, outgunned, and out of options. But he also knew that he couldn't surrender, not when the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. "You won't get away with this," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "The galaxy will know the truth, one way or another." The Kresh delegate's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Oh, I think you'll find that the _galaxy_ will be a little preoccupied with other matters." Suddenly, the air was rent by the shriek of an alarm, and Donovan felt a jolt of pure terror as a massive holographic display flickered to life, revealing a horrifying sight. Across the length and breadth of the galaxy, Human colonies and outposts were being systematically destroyed, reduced to burning rubble by the devastating firepower of the Elder Race's fleets. "No," Donovan breathed, his legs threatening to give way beneath him. "Yes," the Kresh delegate hissed, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "The purge has begun, and unless you agree to surrender the progenitor data, your precious _humanity will be wiped from the face of the galaxy." Donovan stared at the devastation unfolding before him, his mind reeling. He knew that he had to act, that he had to find a way to stop the carnage. But as he looked into the Kresh delegate's merciless gaze, he realized that he had run out of options. The truth had come too late, and the price of revealing it might be the very extinction of his species. Donovan stood frozen, his gaze fixed on the horrifying scenes unfolding across the galaxy-wide holographic display. Entire human colonies were being reduced to smoldering ruins, their populations mercilessly annihilated by the overwhelming firepower of the Elder Race's fleets. "This is madness," he whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and despair. "How could you do this?" The Kresh delegate's reptilian features twisted into a cruel smile. "How could we not underscore?" he hissed. The revelation of the progenitor's true legacy would have torn the Galactic Council apart, undermining the very foundations of our civilization. We couldn't allow that to happen. Not when we've worked so hard to maintain the status quo. Donovan felt bile rise in his throat. "So you decided to commit genocide instead? To wipe out an entire species just to protect your precious power structures? Don't be so naive, human," the Kresh spat. "This is about survival. Our survival. The progenitor truth would have destroyed us all, reduced us to squabbling children fighting over the ruins of a bygone age. We had no choice but to act decisively." Donovan's mind raced, desperately searching for some avenue of escape, some way to stop the carnage. But as he watched the relentless bombardment continue, he knew that time was running out. The Kresh delegate held all the cards, and Donovan was powerless to stop him. "Give me the data, Donovan," the Kresh demanded, his voice dripping with false civility. "Surrender it, and I'll call off the purge. Your people can be spared, if you're willing to accept your place in the new order." Donovan's grip tightened on the data crystal, his knuckles turning white. He knew that he couldn't give in, not when the truth of the progenitor's legacy was at stake. But the thought of his people, his family, his friends, being annihilated because of his defiance was almost more than he could bear. I can't," he choked out, his voice barely above a whisper. The Kresh delegate's eyes narrowed. "Then you've condemned your entire species to extinction." Donovan squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the inevitable. But just as the Kresh delegate raised his hand to signal the final devastating attack, a sudden commotion erupted in the corridor outside. "What in the?" the Kresh delegate growled, whirling around. The sounds of blaster fire and shouting grew louder, and Donovan's heart leaped with a spark of hope. Could it be? Moments later, the door burst open, and a familiar figure strode into the room, her dark eyes blazing with determination. "Reyna," Donovan breathed, relief washing over him. The human counselor leveled her weapon at the Kresh delegate, her jaw set in a grim line. "Step away from him, Kresh," she commanded, her voice laced with steel. "It's over." The Kresh delegate bared his teeth in a snarl. "You're too late, human. The purge has already begun, and unless Donovan surrenders the progenitor data, your entire species will be wiped from existence." Reyna's expression hardened. "That's where you're wrong, Kresh. We've already broadcast the truth to the galaxy, and the tide is turning against you." As if on cue, the holographic display flickered and shifted, revealing a new scene. Across the vastness of space, human fleets were mobilizing, their weapons blazing as they engaged the forces of the Elder Races in a desperate but determined counterattack. Donovan stared in awe, his heart swelling with a surge of pride and hope. "They're fighting back," he murmured, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. The Kresh delegate's eyes widened in alarm. Impossible, he snarled. Our forces should have crushed your kind by now. Reyna's lips curved into a triumphant smile. You underestimated us, Kresh. Underestimated our resilience, our determination, and our belief in the truth. The progenitor legacy belongs to us, and we're not about to let you erase it from history. As the sounds of battle echoed through the corridors, Donovan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The truth had been revealed. The galaxy was rallying to the cause of humanity, and the forces of denial and oppression were crumbling in the face of this new, unassailable reality. It's over, Kresh, Donovan said, his voice steady and resolute. The progenitor legacy is ours to claim, and we're going to use it to build a new, more equitable galactic order. The Kresh delegate let out a guttural roar of rage, but Donovan could see the fear and uncertainty in his eyes. The tables had turned, and the once dominant elder races were now the ones facing an uncertain future. As Reyna and her team of human defenders surrounded the Kresh delegate, Donovan allowed himself a moment of triumph. The truth had come too late to save countless lives, but it had arrived in time to change the course of the galaxy's destiny. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, his gaze shifting from the defeated Kresh to the holographic display, where the tides of battle continued to turn in humanity's favor. The progenitor's legacy is ours, he murmured, his voice filled with a quiet determination. And with it, we will forge a new future, one built on the shared knowledge and cooperation of all sentient beings in the galaxy. The battle for the truth had been won. Now, the real work of rebuilding and reconciliation could begin.